Hi everyone, welcome back to Vice Cubes. I'm Raven Eiko, your host. Thank you for joining me today. Please like, share, and subscribe. I'm on Spreaker, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Mixcloud, Castbox, and YouTube. Come follow me on Facebook at Vice Cubes Podcast and on Instagram at Vice Cubes, where I often share pics that correlate with each episode. And come visit my website at vicecubespodcast.com. You can also send me an email at vicecubes@gmail.com. If you'd like to support this podcast, please do so at patreon.com/vicecubespodcast. So today is September 8th, 2020, and I hope you all had a great week and a nice long weekend. Yesterday was Labor Day, and I hope you all got the day off. I know I did. Feeling pretty refreshed today. So we're more than 9 months into the year. That's pretty scary. And we are less than 2 months away from the general elections. So anyone who isn't registered to vote, you still have time to do that. Your states should have a website for the Office of Elections with links and instructions to register. So go do that if you need to. I encourage you all to show up and vote in person if possible. This is a very important election this year, and I encourage you all to do your research on candidates, local as well as presidential, and get out there and make your voice be heard. So today, the resources for this case were Hawaii News Now, Hawaii Tribune Herald, the Honolulu Star Bulletin, and actual trial and appeal documents from findlaw.com. Nothing in this podcast is meant to be taken as legal advice. It is just the facts of the case as reported. And as always, listener discretion is advised. Today I'll be discussing Frank Charles Janto, a convicted car thief, child rapist, and murderer. So I'm going to start with a little bit of background about Janto. He was born in 1963 in South Carolina to a military family. I believe his dad was in the military. He was the youngest of 7 sons. His parents divorced in 1970, and he relocated with his mother and brothers to Hawaii, Oahu initially, where he attended Liholiho Elementary School and then later Washington Intermediate. So when he was in middle school, his mother relocated the family to Kamuela on the Big Island of Hawaii, where Janto was enrolled at Waimea Middle School. He was expelled from Waimea School, and his education was over at that point. By the time he was 15 years old, he was a violent alcoholic. Before he was even 18 years old, he was referred to the family court for terroristic threatening, car theft, and 2 assaults. He received a total of 30 days confinement at the youth facility on Oahu for these. At age 20, in 1983, he received his first adult felony conviction for car theft and was placed on 5 years probation. He was supposed to have spent a year in jail as part of his probation, but he was permitted to participate instead in a community service project and job-seeking program. So within a year of being placed on probation, there were 2 restraining orders filed against him by his then-girlfriend. She claimed he had hit her, tried to choke her, and threatened to kill her. He told her, quote, "You wait. One day you're going to get where you have a face no one will look at," unquote. The girlfriend never followed through with these restraining orders because the case was dismissed for lack of prosecution. During this time, though, Janto was up to other things, worse things. His girlfriend had 2 daughters from a previous relationship. They were 7 and 9 years old. Janto was sexually abusing both daughters. He was indicted and convicted of second-degree rape. I believe this was just for the rape of the 9-year-old. I'm not sure why they didn't indict him for the 7-year-old as well. But guess what he was sentenced to? Probation. Even though he was already on probation for the car theft, he was given probation and had to spend 1 year in jail and undergo counseling for alcohol abuse and anger management. So you guys got that? He got 1 year probation for raping 2 babies. So he spent some of his 1 year incarcerated, but while he was locked up, he was charged with multiple offenses such as fighting, injuring a person with a dangerous instrument, refusing to obey an order from a staff member, and threatening another inmate with bodily harm. So even after all of this misconduct, his 1 year sentence was still reduced to 8 months, and he was released. But one of the terms of his release was that he had to go live in California with his brother. That didn't last very long. Accounts say that he relocated back to Hawaii after causing problems within his brother's household. I don't know what those problems are, and I couldn't find anything that elaborated on that. So not long after arriving back in Hawaii, he was arrested for disorderly conduct and DUI. His probation was revoked and he was sent back to prison, but not for long, as his sentence was once again reduced to probation. As part of this probation, he had to go to a residential drug and alcohol treatment program. But within days of arriving at the program, he left and was now walking around free on Oahu. In January of 1988, Janto was picked up and returned to prison to serve a term of 10 years. During this time, he received misconduct reports for the use of force or threats to a correctional officer or their family, possession of unauthorized material, and fighting. He was even segregated from the other inmates once for striking another inmate with a folding chair. He was released on parole in March 1990. So that's just 2 years later. And then just a few months after that, on August 4th, 1990, Janto attacked a 63-year-old Vietnamese woman while she was out on her usual morning walk near the Alawai Canal. He came up behind her, grabbed her by the throat, and punched her in the head and in the face. He dragged her to a nearby bush, but she was able to roll away and into the canal when police showed up and rescued her. Janto jumped into the canal and tried to escape, but was apprehended by Honolulu Fire Department personnel who went into the canal with surfboards. The victim was taken to the hospital with bruises to the left and right sides of her face and neck, fractured jaw, fractured left cheekbone, and abrasions to her nose and chin, and her right eye was swollen shut. Janto was found guilty in January 1991 of second-degree assault and was sentenced to 5 years incarceration, and was also required to spend the remainder of his car theft and sex assault sentences in prison. He began serving his term on January 28, 1991. He applied for and was denied parole in 1994, 1995, and 1996. He maxed out his sentence in October 1996 and he was released. So now, here we are in late 1996, and if you guys have been following along the timeline, you will see that since even before 1983, he has been in and out of prison and on probation and on parole for most of the time, but a total of 13 years. But I do feel like he was given a lot of leniency and, been given probation when he should have been locked up, but that didn't happen, and now here we are. 1996, and Frank Janto is once again a free man. But not for long. And we haven't even gotten to the murder yet. Bongak Koja was born in 1938, making her 59 years old in 1997. She moved to Hawaii in 1962 and adopted the nickname Jackie. She resided in Wahiawa on the leeward side of Oahu, and she was a small woman, just 5'2". She weighed about 100 pounds. Jackie liked to stay active. She jogged every morning at 3 a.m. On June 9th, 1997, which was the morning of her 59th birthday, Jackie took her final jog. She never returned home. Carol Ichimura was a custodian at Lelehua High School, and she discovered a deep pool of blood approximately 2 feet across on the grounds of the school. Ichimura hosed down the blood and cleaned up the entire area. No police report was made at this time. I want to stop right here and just say to you guys, if you ever find a pool of blood or anything like that, don't ever clean it up. Don't clean it up, please. Call the police right away instead of washing away critical evidence. Okay, so 2 days later, on June 11th, 1997, a teacher, Miss Katayama, who saw Ichimura hosing down the blood, saw a report of a missing person on the news and contacted the police to report to them about the pool of blood. So the HPD officer who was assigned to investigate the report was Officer Philip Camaro. He discovered a pale stain where the pool of blood was and a trail of blood drops leading down the hallway and bloodstains on a dumpster. By this time, the dumpster had already been emptied and its contents transported to the H-Power incineration plant. Koja's body was never recovered, and it is likely that it was destroyed by the incineration process. In a nearby trash can, police discovered a can of pepper spray and a Walkman headphone. Arthur Sagan, a school employee, testified that he found the pepper spray and headphone on the school grounds and placed them in the trash can. A piece of dental bridgework was recovered in front of the school. Dr. Harold Matsunaga, who was Koja's dentist, testified that he had fitted Koja with permanent replacement teeth cemented into her mouth. He stated that the bridgework found at the crime scene matched Koja's. Also recovered from the scene were a bent pair of eyeglass frames and a fragment of a lens. Dr. Arthur Kobayashi, Koja's optometrist, testified that the lens had the same prescription as and the frames were identical to a pair owned by Koja. A lot of this may seem like circumstantial evidence to you guys, and really that's exactly what it is, since we had no body and no actual direct evidence at this point. At the end of the episode, we'll discuss the difference between circumstantial and direct evidence. So on June 12, 1997, Frank Janto voluntarily approached an HPD officer and stated that he wanted to talk with him about a missing person incident. He was taken to the Wahiawa police station where he met with Detective Alan Castro. He was read his Miranda rights and then questioned by detectives in a tape-recorded interview in which he denied having any knowledge of Koja's disappearance. 2 days later, Janto called Detective Castro and told him he wanted to make a statement. So he was once again transported to the Wahiawa police station, read his Miranda rights, and interviewed. During this interview, Janto confessed to killing a woman and described the events in detail. Janto's story, in short, is that he approached Koja and was just joking around with her, but she sprayed him with pepper spray in the face. He grabbed her head and pounded it on the cement. He took her body and dragged it to a dumpster, where he covered her with trash and left. He said he felt bad about hurting Koja, and he knew he left fingerprints at the scene, so that's why he decided to turn himself in. Castro arrested him for murder. On June 16, 1997, Castro took Janto to the grounds of Lelehua High School to reconstruct the events of June 9th. On June 20th, Janto was charged via complaint with second-degree murder. So on January 26, 1998, Janto was found guilty of second-degree murder by a jury and was later sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. The Hawaii Paroling Authority set a minimum term of 75 years before he can ask for parole. Prosecutor Peter Carlisle asked for enhanced sentencing, which would make him eligible for parole after serving 100 years, but the court denied that, stating that the state didn't provide sufficient notice to seek an extended term. So basically what they said was that upon charging or at the beginning of the case, they should have stated that they were going to be seeking enhanced sentencing at that time. And because they didn't, it was too late for them to seek that now. During trial, Janto's attorneys requested mental health examiners to determine his fitness to proceed and penal responsibility. Earlier, I said that Janto had made statements to police. Basically, he confessed voluntarily after being read his Miranda rights. The defense was now fighting those statements and claiming that his drug use invalidated the knowing and voluntary waiver of his rights. All of the doctor's reports supported the fact that Janto was mentally capable to proceed and denied Janto's motion to suppress his statements. Upon appeal, the appellate court found that the trial court did not err and his conviction was upheld. An interesting thing about the opening statement of the defense attorney that is worth mentioning here is that the defense attorney said that Janto didn't mean to kill Koja, and that because